Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back. You know, you've got to feel bad for somebody like Barry Weiss, who's just barely got her feet under her over at CBS. She's in the process of rebuilding a news organization that's lost so much credibility, they're down there with CNN and MS Now. You know, the news organizations that most people point and laugh at. The only worse one would be obviously ABC News, but we'll talk about them another time. The problem is that they have working for them somebody who was linked to Island Boy, and not just linked, but had their emails released as part of this massive release of emails from the Island Boy's estate. We're starting to see a pattern. People get revealed for what they were, and then they no longer have their job. And it looks like, from a lot of insiders, that that's the case with Peter Attia. Whether or not that actually happens is yet to be seen. But in most people's estimations, it's kind of a done deal. And that's what we're here to talk about. Here we go. Now, before we get started, just a quick reminder, I'm trying to get to 50K, which means if you select that little subscribe button down there, if it happens to be red, turn it gray, and then hit that little bell icon next to it and turn all notifications on. That way you don't miss any live streams, any videos, or any posts that I make, or if you happen to be a member, you won't miss any of the early videos that I publish that you can see up to a half a day, even a full day before they actually release, like I did yesterday. Let's take a look very quickly at this particular story, because I think it's going to be the one best starting point that we have, because otherwise it's just a bunch of speculation, and I want to lead somewhere with this one. CBS News pulls Peter Attia 60 Minutes segment after the Epstein revelations. Now, honestly, this to me isn't that big a deal. When you pull something like this, you're really just removing a story that's already been seen by many. In fact, this is part of a rerun package that's going along with the timing for the Super Bowl. And Deadline covers the story this way. CBS News has pulled 60 Minutes segment by physician and longevity researcher Peter Attia after revelations that his name appears in more than 1,700 documents in the latest release of the Island Files. The segment, which first aired in October, was to be included in a rerun airing Sunday against the Super Bowl. The Attia segment will be replaced with another piece. Now, look, 60 Minutes has a ton of segments. They can certainly drag and drop something else into the show. It's not going to hurt anything. But it speaks to a bigger issue that they have there. They're tied to a guy who's questionable, and the only person who has the power to make a unilateral decision over there outside of, well, the big bosses over at Skydance is Barry Weiss. She holds the final say, according to the New York Post, on Peter Attia's fate at CBS. 60 Minutes pulls the interview on the rerun, and nobody knows exactly what or when this will happen. But at the newly created conglomerate, that would be Paramount Skydance, we find that the CEO, David Ellison, is deterring to Weiss over the question of whether or not to fire Attia, just days after the network brought him on as a contributor. The Status Newsletters reported that, adding that the decision rests with her. And to be fair, that makes perfect sense. You want your news boss to control your newsroom, what you cover, and how you operate it. Weiss has been reluctant to fire Attia right away and possibly has already made the decision but hasn't passed it along to anybody else yet, including Attia. But here's the weird thing, and I have a feeling that we're going to have to reflect on this in this way. Other companies are either asking him to step away, step down, or disappear. In fact, Dave at Longevity Labs reports that CBS is cutting ties with Peter Attia. He was hired less than a week ago. A career in longevity apparently does not equate career longevity. And while that is a humorous comment there, it certainly is revelatory. If you work in an industry with somebody who has been elevated, like this man has been over the last few years, you start to point out the dents in the armor. And apparently there's more than a few. As a matter of fact, Peter Rafal has pointed out that Peter Attia stepped down from his role as chief science officer at David Protein. They're going to remain focused on serving customers. Now, this was, as far as I know, out of the blue, but directly related to the scandal itself. And worse yet, Peter Attia was made fun of by Dr. Gupta over at MS Now this morning. On Morning Joe, he is pointing out or trying to explain that perhaps Peter Attia didn't actually have his medical license per se because he had never completed a residency. And whether or not any of that is true, I cannot confirm. All I can do is rely on the news from the New York Post that the best-selling author and media personality has apologized for the emails, stepped down as the chief science officer at David, as I showed you, and that he's ended some other relationships as well. When it comes to stories like this, it's important to wait until all the facts are in. But as we've seen and heard from multiple sources now, including some folks over at The Wrap, this is already a done deal. It's just not yet announced. So Peter Attia is likely not going to be with CBS. And perhaps that's for the best, since credibility is very important in a news gathering organization, and they really need to rebuild it, especially if you check out the story I'm dropping or have dropped, depending upon when you're watching this, about the fact that news media has very low trust indeed. On that note, thank you for checking out today's video. Let me know what you think about this particular issue, whether or not Peter Attia should remain, or whether or not you're surprised that he isn't already out the door. Your comments are welcome below, as is the thumbs up button. And thank you. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. Hopefully with better news.